Welcome, everyone. I am Luis Antonio Pichardo, founder and executive director of DSTL Arts, the producer of the Art Block podcast. We are officially launching season 2, episode number 1 here tonight, this evening with our lovely co-host Abraham Jaramillo. Say what's up, Abraham.
What's up?
And joining us tonight, or at least for this episode, depending on when you're listening to it, we have Alan Sobrino. And I have a quick little bio here. Alan Sobrino is a writer and book artist from Mexico City, working under the imprint Errant Press, based in Los Angeles, California, founded in 2020. His work is a formal exploration of books' limits, often printing books outside their traditional codex form and exploring different mediums that stories can inhabit, proposing a flexible definition of what a book is. Yeah, I like the bio description that you have there, Alan. Thank you for joining us. Thank you also to Tanya, who is your partner in crime, I'm assuming, with Errante Press.
And, knows where the bodies are hidden.
Yeah. Pero yeah, gracias por acompañarnos.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Do you have anything else to add to your bio? I mean, that's a pretty cool bio. I like the idea of a book as an object, and it being able to inhabit different forms.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I tried. I mean, as a writer, I'm first of all, I'm a writer. So instead of trying to make art in the book form, I try to make literature outside the book form. So that's kind of like the project.
Yeah. ¿Qué te inspiró en eso? I mean, porque a mí siempre me ha gustado construir como poesías o poemas que son así interactivos. And I specifically, many years ago, made a little mini-zine que se llama Cien Fuegos, 100 Flames. And I call it an interactive poem. Pero para ti, ¿qué fue tu inspiración? Because, I mean, looking at your Instagram, I saw some really cool stuff that I'd like to touch on later. Pero, yeah, what was your inspiration for creating books in the way that you create the books? Or you envision books?
I've been writing all my life, and for a long time I questioned myself how to mix literature and contemporary art. And for a long time I thought poetry did the trick. I thought like poetry is like the greatest thing; it's sublime. So it's a mixture of every art into words. But after years passed, I didn't feel like completely comfortable with this answer. So I started experimenting, and I've been doing books all my life since I was a little kid. Like giving presents to my father on Father's Day, they were books. I made little books for him, and so I've been doing this like book for all of my life. But eventually, I found some Mexican book artists that inspired me a lot, and that were playing with this kind of poetry in different mediums, so I decided to go for it and started doing my own.
Nice. And what was it in el año 2020 que, like, este es el año para Errante? What was the impetus there?
I don't know. In 2019, I started doing these little matches for Tanya. I made one as a present. And those were the first little matchbooks. I made this book inside a little matchbook, functional matches. It looks very different. It looked very different than what it looks now, but it was my first experiment. And because the poem was very intense and very fire related, I thought like, oh, I think this is it. And after that experiment, I kept experiment, but it was like opening a door that led me to different possibilities, or breaking my mind structure and giving myself the opportunity to try different stuff.
Okay.
Cool. Well, I have these long questions, so bear with me. So the first object that resembles our modern book were basically created in India, 100,000 BC. and basically has a lot of things of religious status. Like it was spread of Afghanistan, China via Buddhism monks in the first century, right? And that's cool facts of like the way pages were created, like as sutras, things like that. So, do you have any cool facts or interesting facts, how I call them, like because I know you've been doing books for a long time. Do you have any facts that you want to share with our audience?
About books, like book
Yes,
history.
or book laying, or book making, or book deals.
I don't know. I think there's a lot of cool things about books. I'm very passionate about books, the books as an object, and I read a lot of books about books. It's one of my favorite things to read. But I don't know. Um, what inspires me the most is like the different forms that a book can take. Like you said, the first book is made in India in this year and stuff. But for me, the interesting question is, what is a book? What really is a book? Because before this book, we had scrolls probably, or different kind of materials. Or even if we go to like the Hammurabi stone, we have the a book, written information recorded in a stone. And in Rome, they use wax tablets to record, to practice calligraphy in the schools, and made books out of it. So the interesting question is, what is a book? And before that, even like people used to sing, like the Iliad. It's a singing a poem made to be sing, and that's why it has so many mnemotechnic factors in the making, because it was meant written to be spoken, or at least spoken before written. So the written part still contains parts of the spoken part. So for me, this is very interesting. For me, the great question is, what is a book? Can a person that is saying a 6 hour story be a book, or a scroll, or three different scrolls, three chapters in three scrolls can be a book, or what? Yeah, what can we call a book? And I think we can call everything a book, almost everything, like even the caves, like the prehistoric caves, are in their way a book, because they tell a story. They record information to tell us a story over time.
Yes, you get my next question. That was my next question. So good for that. But definitely, that is a question we have pondered upon, like with Luis in the classes, like because before even like writing in poetry was spoken word, right? Like that's how people gather and like have people tell stories, and that's why we end up with rhyming, because that's how we're going to memorize something, right? To get those patterns in the brain and like be able to say like I don't know 100 pages without having to read it, right? And that's also places where they use people as books. Have you ever heard that? Like this is like people's library or something it's called. And basically you go and meet with somebody and ask them questions and the person becomes the book. It's always that fascinating. So I guess Luis, what do you think a book is? Now that we're discussing this, I think everybody like has some idea of what a book is.
Yeah, that was actually going to be one of my questions, is like, how do we define a book? Because like, I mean, based on what Abraham was saying right now, a book could be like the person, in the story. But I feel like if it was my definition of a book, it would probably just be like the vessel that carries the story, ¿verdad? I mean, sea lo que sea, puede ser un zine. I mean, even just like a single sheet of paper, ¿verdad? If it has a story on it, you could potentially call it a book, right? If that's the definition. But I am curious, to hear your definition, Alan. What is your definition for a book?
I don't have a definition, obviously. And if I think that it's not healthy to have a definition when you are trying to make books, but I can say that there I like to think of all the different definitions. Like the academic definition is content recorded in some way images or words recorded in a source track that can keep information.
Mm.
And I like this academic definition, but like there's another one from Ulises Carrion, Mexican conceptual artist, that he says books are a sequence in space-time, sequence of information in space-time. And this is very interesting because yes, sequence of information in a space-time broadens the definition, but also make it more precise. And I like this from Ulises Carrion. So I don't know, depending from the field you are trying to look at it, you're gonna come up with different definitions. And I'd like to like try to study them all and try to make something in between. Yes.
Yeah, I do like Luis's definition, a vessel, basically, because again, who's coming up with the idea is gonna eventually die, right? Like everything in life passes away. So a vessel can become like also another person. So I like that definition. So that it's not just a thing, but it can be a living thing. But as long as the message or the idea keeps existing, I think that's the format for to me to consider, a book, right? In that kind of sense of becoming a vessel of whatever idea or thought or thing that we're gonna put into the future, especially, right?
Well, I mean, you have to differentiate between content and container because the vessel is the physical, the physical stuff where you put the content that is the story. But what about PDFs, for example? They don't suit to this definition. They
The
are
what?
not the PDFs like
Uh-huh.
ebooks, like los
Mhm.
libros electrónicos or the ebooks. Not the Kindle, not the physical ebook, but the content, the PDF. Those are also books, and they are not a vessel. They are not a thing. They are nothing, or
Well,
they're a bit
in
in a
reality, they
computer.
are because they had to be somewhere, right? Like the actual, like the cloud. People say, like, is this thing that doesn't exist, but it does exist somewhere, right?
Yeah, a bit in a
It's still
computer, in a
vessel, right?
hard drive. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where, like, at least for modern day society, ¿verdad? It's kind of like we have to continually evolve our definition for what is a book and what is a vessel, what is a container, because I mean it's a in the case of like a PDF, it's a sequence of zeros and ones. It's a program, right, that has been sequenced in a particular way. Um, and it's not that different from, like, I just learned about the Kipu. I don't know if you're familiar with the Kipu, Alan. Um, but it's a form of data collection or data storage that was used by the Inca. And the Inca used it, basically created it using strings and knots tied on a string. So every knot had a significance, and every color of the string had a significance. And then the length of the string had a significance. And so uh I think it's really interesting to sort of see how we're going back to the same general way of storing information, by either saying, the 1-0 relationship, the binary. That's a way to just kind of, I don't know, register data. So um yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm
That
rambling.
that's interesting because it also raises the question. Okay, we have this vessel, right, containing information, but it's also important to mention, like, we need to be able to read that information. So that leads another questions like, who is gonna read that information in the way like future? Like, for example, the technology that Luis is speaking of, I don't think it's somebody who actually can
Mm,
read it, right? Like, they just have this speculation of how it's used and some a little bit information here and there, but that's not like a fluent reader of it.
yeah.
So, wow. Sorry.
It's a very philosophical idea, again, going back to the simple question of, like, well, how do you define a book? You know?
Do you
Um,
need a receiver as well, right? Like, you need somebody to be able to read the content of the book. Otherwise, it just becomes something, doesn't it?
yeah. And like in your case, Alan, the one of the things that I saw you recently produced was a tape measure with a poem written on the tape measure, and uh I was wondering, what is your like thought process in that? How is a person um, kind of meant to engage in that? Is it meant to be interactive, or are you meant to just kind of like read it as it comes? What was your thought process in developing that project?
Oh, first of all, I just want to answer the something about the question before. Is that I believe my definition would be everything is a book, and or everything can be a book. And I think this tape measurement, going back to the question, is related to this because I started thinking first about this poem about measuring things. Mm. And in the middle of writing it, I thought about like, well, where should I put a poem about measuring things? And well, obviously in a measuring tape. And what better than a measuring tape that we all know, the archetypical yellow measuring tape. In all countries that we have one. You go to the tailor, you got this. Like it's present like in almost all parts of the world. So I thought it would be a very good place to put the poem. And I decided also to separate the poem using lines, just as the regular measuring tapes. And yeah, eventually when I made it, when it was printed, it's a screen printed. I decided to, when I hold it and I finally had it, like I decided to start measuring things with that. So I've been doing performances measuring galleries or spaces or stairs with this tape and taking the cubic verse volumetry of the spaces,
Mhm.
uh, making like the verse of poetry measurement.
Wow.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
We're just talking with Luis with somebody who attended our classes and talking about what makes a poem or art, right? Like, and we're talking about those different techniques or things like that. But like the way you instead of like just because we're mainly talking about like the text and things that you can see in the page, but you're taking the art into a 3D space. You're taking in the actual object and combining it with the piece, which is really interesting because it's adding to the piece, right? That's what we're always talking like, why are you using this technique for or that for it? Because now you're talking about the measuring things and you're using something to measure, like you transforming something that's just a thought or an idea into something physical. I like that. That's pretty interesting.
Thank you. I invite people to measure other people or themselves with, I think it's very poetic to say like my hair is about 10 verses or my right arm is 15 verses. I think it's very fun a very fun
Oh, so
experiment to
cool.
do and to alter reality and make it a little bit more fun.
Yeah, that sounds like a really great way of engaging with your audience. And I'm curious, where does for you as you're writing or creating an object, um, how do you envision the audience kind of interacting with it? Like, ¿de dónde sale como esa idea en este ejemplo, construir un poema que sirve como método para medir? Like, where does that, de dónde nace eso?
I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, I like writing poetry and I like looking at the world with a more poetic view. And I think that this kind of view helps me experiment with this kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I like that, like
it's not the writing.
experimenting.
It's not my view, the product of the writing, but the writing, the product of what I try to view the world as.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's kind of like trying to always come up with something new. Because I see that some of your Instagram posts is like different projects that you've been doing. It's that like the sense of playfulness with things and trying not just to have one thing and dedicating yourself to just that. You're always trying to play with things. And with that in mind, like uh what are your thoughts on borders. And I said this because I know you have this project called Iran Passport, and I think we encountered before with like Black Ayer. And what can you tell us more about this project, and also during the process, maybe tell us about what you think about borders?
Yes, well, the errand passport is like a conceptual essay about borders. First, I decided to make this book. Before it was a passport, it was a formal academic essay about open borders. And it took me some years, 2.5, maybe 3 years, doing research about borders, reading papers and watching movies and really getting into different kind of borders. I had a chance to talk with this amazing Mexican writer during this process called Pablo Soler Frost that wrote a book called Grietas, that it's about the cracks in the borders. He wrote a complete book, a complete essay about cracks in the borders. This is beautiful. And I contacted him on Instagram, and he kept suggesting movies and books, talking about the different kind of borders. And eventually, I realized that the information supporting open borders is already overwhelming. Right? It's not even a discussion. It's not even a debate. So why are borders still a thing if it's proven in almost every way the positive impact and the inevitable migration of people through history? Like why are we still like against or even taking a political stance? Like it should be like something completely natural, like for birds or for other animals. So I decided to make this passport that allows its carrier to move freely throughout the world. And it was because to me, borders are more a mental thing, a cultural thing than a real thing. Borders are completely imaginary, are imaginary lines. They are not actual borders. I mean, of course, if it's a river or something, they are natural borders. But borders are just imaginary lines caused by fear. And my passport is my reaction to this, or this is my way of saying it without actually trying to convince anyone, just trying to say like, if the border is real, then this passport allows you to cross this real border, you know? And my passport is as real as your border.
I like that concept. It also remind me of like, I don't know if you, and well, probably you have seen it because all the research you did, like this piece that was, I think, in the border of Mexico. They have like it's not a swing. What's the color one that does this thing?
Sube baja.
Yeah, el sube y baja. It has this device, basically, it's like a big piece of tube, I guess. And one person sits in one side and the other one person sits in the other side. And literally both are in different sides of different countries, right? And that means you're requiring two people to interact in order for it to work. So I like that piece. It erases a lot of things. It's interactive as well. It just reminded me, like, just because we're talking about borders.
Yes, I think there's a lot of good pieces around borders and a very wide theme in art, especially this part of the world. There's also a one that put an artist, I think JR, that put a big baby in like a huge ad just in front of in the Mexican side, just in front of the guards, like just in front of the patrol officer thing. They had to look at this baby crying over the border all day, and they're crazy. There are some crazy pictures of the officers like scared looking at the baby, at the huge baby crying.
That's interesting. I think this conversation is making me think a lot about, again, kind of this idea of interaction and audience. I don't think a giant baby that's crying sitting across the border in front of la caseta de los border patrol, like, I don't think that would be as effective without the border patrol there. ¿Verdad? And the seesaw, the sube y baja, it wouldn't be effective without, some sort of interactive element. How do you think your projects would exist without that interactive component of your audience, your reader? Um, would it still be a book for you in those instances? Would it still have an impact, do you think?
Mm, I don't know. I mean, the interactivity part is key for any book, even for codex books. You have to open it and stick your eyes in there and watch them in silence and read. Right. So the interactivity part, I think, it's an ingredient of all books. I just like playing with how many ways or how many different ways can you do the same thing, that is like sticking your eyes into something in silence and doing it. I mean, there are many ways of doing it. So why not playing with this? But also, yeah. For example, for the passport, whenever someone buys it, we give them a form. They fill it out. They choose their name, express their sexuality in any way. We take them a picture or have it sent them to us. And we print it, stamp it, and hand them the passport. And I like this because it makes the book customized for each reader. So it's not just like a regular book, but more like a regular part. So yeah, in the same way, I think that interactivity, even if I don't admit it, it's a big part of the books I make because it's always very, very important part of them.
Yeah, it's like basically we're talking about like we have this vessel, but without anybody to be able to read it, it's a thing. It doesn't hold anything, right? We always have to think of like who's gonna read it, and like sometimes we try to do like how they're gonna react to it, right? Like the sube y baja, they knew somebody was gonna go and operate it, right? Like somebody has to be sitting there for it to become something, right? And well, just since we're talking about borders on and places of origin, I guess I know you're from La Ciudad de Mexico, which I always try to not say that because other cities in Mexico and try not to diminish any of them. So let's call it like the capital of Mexico. I don't know. So by becoming from it, like does that influence your art or affect it in any way? Especially today's art, I guess, the ones you're making.
No, no, not at all. I'm affected by Spanish, not specifically by Mexico City, but by Spanish. Spanish is more my home than Mexico City. I've been living in different places, and even though I was born and raised in Mexico City, I feel that the Spanish language is my home more than geographic space. And this is also relate to borders. How can I be influenced by this place if borders are not? I am also from this place where I'm now. It's the same place. It's not different place. So no, but Spanish for sure. Spanish language has definitely shaped and Spanish poetry, Mexican poets from Chile, and from all over Latin America definitely have taken a big impact in all my work. Yes.
Hmm. It's I think that we end up touching on this a lot in the podcast, because the majority of the people that we've had on the podcast are like us, either um most of them are Mexican, or of Mexican descent, uh up to this point anyway, or they're of Latin American descent. So we have this conversation a lot about the concept of ni de aquí ni de allá, and how oftentimes we feel a sense of um belonging to something but not specifically anything. So for you, it sounds like it's Spanish, and I would probably say the same for me. Spanish is actually my first language, although I was born in the US. And, I when I write now, more often than not, it's in Spanish. Y I don't know if it's a function of being around more people who speak Spanish more often than I used to be. But when you think about Spanish and you think about it as home, specifically, what is it about the language that makes it home for you? Is it because it's the language that use to communicate with family, or is it because it's a language that speaks to a place that you feel familiar with, or like what is that relationship with language for you?
I think language is a way of programming our brains. It's like the software. We are the hardware, we are the vessel, and the language is the software, And there are different kind of softwares like Linux, Windows, or MacOS, or whatever. And Spanish program and design my brain in this way. But it's very cool because there are a lot of words in Spanish that do not translate into English. Obviously, this happens in almost every language. It's not a specific of
Mhm.
Spanish. But what it's a specific of Spanish and different words deriving from um, indigenous languages in Mexico or in Mesoamerica is that there are a lot of words designed to say feelings and to express emotions and to express some very difficult concepts like I need help from this problem is bigger than me and I need help from my community, and there's a word specific word that you can use, or languages impacts the way we go through life because of this. Because if we know that there's a word that calls for help for a problem that it's bigger than you, you know that you can get help for a problem that it's bigger than you, and then you go through life with a different attitude. So in this way, Spanish is like because it's my programmation, because I'm programmed this way, my emotions and my feelings are attached, or I can only relate to some emotions in this language that I don't find in at least in English, that it's my other language.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's like I think people who hasn't encountered like speaking of bilingual or like many other languages also sometimes tend to think like everything's translatable. Like, oh, okay, I'm saying this to this person. Can you just flip the switch and tell them that? But there's a thing that people don't understand. It's like languages are not just words and things like that. It's a way of thinking. It's not just English translating to Spanish. No, Spanish is thinking a different way than English thinking. It's so that's why they say like people who speak many different language have a little more of the different neural connections because we're trying to think differently, right? That's just how these languages evolve. Like you're saying, we have words that are not basically translatable in English, and not just that, but also the way of thinking. We have a specific way of thinking, and this also goes to little towns, small towns. It's just not like the borders we're talking about. It's not that like broad. It's really specific. And anyways, I don't know. I don't want to open up that gate. But here in this podcast, we usually ask like oh, who are the people that you admire, or the people who influence you, like, and I always have like different artists that I like to mention. For example, Alphonse Mucha, who's a Czech artist. You probably have seen his work. It's like this beautiful women, like with like hair pieces and really cool ways of framing, really illustrative. And I like his work. Like if you guys want to check it, Alphonse Mucha, it's pretty cool. So do you have any artists that you want to mention? It could be music, writing, poetry, or sculpture, or film that you want to talk about?
Wow, it's a very broad question. I don't know if I want to get into that, but
No pressure. Tick, tack, tick, tack.
I mean, I really admire. Well, I think my biggest influence and an artist I really admire is my dad, because he designs furniture, and also is a printing maestro. He's an aficionado, a maestro of printing. So he actually helps me print one of one of my books, the yellow tape I was talking about. He just won an honorific mention in Mexico's Designers Week. So definitely a lot of what I do comes from him, and I really like his work. Not precisely my style though, but I really like what he does and that he has his own trip. And I think part of what my artistic endeavor comes from him. I don't know. I have a lot of people I admire. One woman I was specifically obsessed with a couple of years ago was Lady Mary Montagu. She's a poet and a scientific pioneer and pre-Renaissance super genius, something like Sor Juana, but from England. And Sor Juana, of course, I really admire her. There's a lot of poets and artists. Marcel Duchamp, I think it's also one of my biggest obsessions. I study his work, and I read a lot about him, and I'm really influenced also by his ready-made surrealist approach, or Duchamp approach to art. Yes.
Yeah, I love it. That's why I like that question. We always find new ones, and I love that your dad does that. Like, so you, because I always find like this fascinating. Like, people are like sometimes really into the like, different ways of approaching art, and I feel like that's also a special way into people who create things that are more tactile. That they are more manual. Do you think you get that from your dad, or I think you have some of that, right? Like you trying to also work with your hands.
Yes, yes, I think so. I've been working. I work in my dad's furniture factory for a long time during my childhood and teenage years, and and yes, I think it's very similar actually. Making furniture to making books, it kind of requires same kind of engineering, cutting, measuring. It's actually similar in some ways, not precisely, obviously, but definitely, yes. And I also think that making stuff with your hands feels good. It feels good. Whatever you do, I mean, even if you cook, I think making stuff or this transformation process and using your hand, it's part of the human being, and we should all like be more involved in doing stuff with our hands. And it's so easy to do a lot of things, and we're maybe missing an opportunity or a talent that we have hidden over there.
I have the same conversation with one of my friends. She's always telling me like, because she's really like that, right? She likes building things, and she's always telling me like, this, and I think I found the word, but I forgot it already. It's basically, yeah, this, I don't know, this feeling when you work with your hands in a project, especially art project or something similar. With it's just this tactile thing that gives you a different feeling that just like, I don't know, like computer or just writing. It just has something that's, I don't know, maybe it's because you're making something that's physical. Maybe it's that, I don't know. I have some of that, but I try to avoid it sometimes. I'm more like into the, let me think about it and let somebody do it the job for that.
Doing all your work.
Yes, for example, I love mechanical thinking. Like I love to know how the workings of the car, like the engine, the brakes, the transmissions. I love how I like learning how it works, but I don't like working on my car. So that's what I'm saying. I don't have too much of that. Like I need to get my hands dirty all the time. Sometimes it's good, but I know some people like I go for it. Like they definitely are into that kind of feeling.
Yeah. This conversation was making me think about, from like a philosophical point of view, we've been kind of trained to believe that we're made in God's image, right? In Christian, yeah, in Christian religion, spirituality, that idea that, and probably others too that I might not be familiar with, but we are told, right, that we are creators. And maybe from a spiritual point of view or a philosophical point of view, maybe that's what is so appealing about working with our hands, because kind of like what you said, Alan, it's like a transformation process. When you're working with the materials that you're using for your books, do you feel like you're witnessing a transformation, or like you're manipulating objects and transforming them? Is that kind of your like philosophical point of view?
Uh, I mean, I like doing things, and it's very satisfying process to think about something and hold it some time after thinking about it, like, and that it looks exactly how you imagine it. I think it's a very satisfying feeling. Uh, about the transformation, I don't know. I don't know. I like creating. I think it's a very important part of human beings. This part of creating. I try to do my thing. I don't know what else would I do if I wouldn't be doing this. So I do my thing, but I don't know. I don't think that much about yeah, creating or transforming. I just know I have to do it, and I try to do it.
So they're like, we're talking about like this getting somewhere and like start working on things, regardless of like writing or creating something physical, or I don't know, punching a bag. I don't know. Do you have, or have you noticed if there is a zone, the zone, like when you feel like, oh, this is, I feel it now and I'm working on it. Have you figured out the time or space or that gets you there?
Um, I mean, the thing is, making a book is a very long process, because you have to write first. And when you write, it's an iteration process. You have to do it over and over and over and over and over and over, and then let it rest, and then go over and over and over. You have to edit. And then you have to conceptualize it. It's an object in my case, or try to figure out the best way to print it or to bring it to life. Or if not, forget about it, and leave it like another document on your drive forever there. Or if you decide to go for it, like conceptualize it, start making dummies or trying to figure out how you're gonna do it, and then eventually design it, that it's another completely has its own process of iterations and stuff, and finally printing. So to be honest, I don't think I have like I think consistency is the only key to make the books or any kind of project in the long term. You have to be consistent and do it every single day without fault, like without missing it. Every single day, I try to do the same things. I don't have a specific order. Most of days I don't even want to do them because I'm lazy and I like having fun more than I have like working, but I still do them. And I think that's the only key. Yes, be consistent on your practice and have like, and yeah, that's it. That's the only thing for me.
So
Sometimes, some
you're a
days I'm more
pusher.
concentrated, sometimes I'm more focused, but it doesn't matter because I try to do it still the same days or every day.
So yeah, you're a pusher. You have your calendar, like, I need to do this. Fuck, let's do this.
Yes. I'm gonna die, so it's not like I have a calendar. Like I'm actually gonna die, so I wanna do things before I die. Yes, my time is very limited, so
Yeah.
I try to do as much as I can.
Yes, and definitely that creates more work, even though sometimes you're like, I have to do it. You,
Have you
Luis?
have you ever worked on a project and gotten to a point where you realized este no va a salir? Have you ever experienced that? And if you have, I mean, what do you do in that moment to kind of cope with that?
Yes, a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot. My little workshop is packed with unfinished projects that died in some part of the process, like, and my drive is full, like filled with different poems that didn't go anywhere, or short stories, or essays, or stuff that, yeah, never materialized into something worthy.
Yes, it's the hard drive you're saying, like it's gonna stay there.
Yes, yes. And I don't know, I don't cope with that. Right? I just keep, like, I try another thing. I just try to keep doing more stuff, and eventually I reuse. Like, I'm writing something, and I know, oh, maybe I can fit this that I wrote some time ago here, or I didn't make a book, but a magazine asked me for a poem, and I have a lot because they didn't make it into a book, and I send it, and it gets published in a traditional way that I also like, and I mean, I feel very fortunate to be published anywhere. Sometimes the things I write that do not make it to a book make it to other publications, and I feel as happy as if it was because it's your baby, It's
Mhm.
kind of your baby, even though it's not in a book you like. It's in another people publication, like a shared baby. Then
Yeah, I could relate with that. Yeah.
So you're saying you love all your babies the same? That's a lie.
A ver,
There's
pero
always a favorite.
yeah, y neta, what is your favorite, Alan? Of all the projects that you've done up to this point, which one is your favorite that
of
everybody should check out?
of my books,
Uh-huh.
my favorite is actually the one that is the least favorite of the audience. Like, I mean, in talking about how many of these I've sold, and my favorite one is it's an epistolary novel. Uh, Epistolary novels are letters, are novels written in correspondence.
Mhm.
But instead of publishing it in a traditional codex book form, I'm sending the readers each chapter as a letter, as they were each one of the characters, and I'm handwriting the letters, so they have like like a real. Of course, I just handwrite one, and then
Mhm.
scan it and make the printing process. Of course, no, but you receive like a real handwritten letter into your house as you want one of the characters. And this book is inspired in one of my favorite novels called Dangerous Liaisons, an 18th century French novel, epistolary novel, beautiful, one of the best epistolary pieces ever written. And it's highly inspired in this, but what mine is a pornographic version of it, so it's way more fun than the original. And I like that I play with this limit of the book. Of, again, what is a book? A series of letters mailed in different months can be a book. Of course they can. Of course, this is how novels were, at least for a couple of centuries.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
So
the
you becoming a pen pal of many people,
In a way, they cannot respond me because I don't want
especially with those
it's
like
pornographic.
spicy letters.
Yes, yes. So it's one way. It's just one way. Yes.
Ahí está. For our audience, go out and ¿cómo se llama el libro?
This book is called Intimate Correspondence. I think in Spanish sounds way better. It's Correspondencia Íntima. Yeah, it's available in our website.
Excellent. Yeah, see? So there you go, audience. Let's get Alan's book to sell out.
And don't forget to mail him the responses, please.
Yes, please.
I'm just kidding.
No.
It's like no.
But I like this format. I really like exploring this format because I'm. This is a spoiler, but I'm also sending some stuff that there are no letters because it's not. No, I mean, it's not like a big letter, but also some other stuff. because it's very cool that I can play with what people is getting at their home, and how they are interacting with a book, and also extending what is a book. If I'm sending each chapter by mail, if I and then I send you something that is not necessarily a letter, is that part of the book? If this object, if I put in an envelope, I don't know, like a piece of metal or whatever, is this part of the book, or how can it's part of the information you are receiving, but how can this be a book? I really like to play with these kind of ideas.
I like that specific thing because that we're trying to touch more like into our lectures lately, like how to play, how to become comfortable with exploring. Because I think we get too into like the techniques or the official way of doing things. Like people asking us, "What's a poem?" and like we're trying to be not as specific as other people might be, right? Like trying to say is like you need to play with language, right? Or need to play with like the concept of it. So I like that you not only playing with the concept of a story, you're playing with the concept of how do you tell this story and like the actual like what's the way of speaking to the public? Are you just writing, or is just a book, or is this letters? Is this more stuff that I can send with the letters? So you're still playing with the concept of what is it, right? Like it's really important to keep of that open mind of where things supposed to look like, and like no, there's many ways of getting the message across, right? And talking about that, like what if you created this tiny book and it has 3 tips for upcoming artists? Can you tell us at least one? Maybe Luis and I can help you. Like, what would you say like one of those chapters be for one of those upcoming artists in this tiny book?
The first one would be, don't buy drugs, you're gonna get them for free. uh, yeah, don't invest on them, you're gonna still get them. A lot of people are gonna give them to you for free, so yeah, don't waste your money on them.
It's like I need to hang out with Alan more. I think that's a key.
Please edit that off. I'm just kidding. That was for your.
That's all right, man.
That one's staying
That's
in.
why I use the safety words. Safety words here, like Dottie, raise
For
it.
your fun only. uh, three advices for upcoming artists. Yeah, I think the first one would be consistency. That I already say, like, be consistent. The second one is like, do your shit. Like, don't try to do anyone else shit. Like, your voice is unique because you are you. And I see so many people trying to sound like someone else. I mean, like, it's better to find your voice and do shitty poems, because you will eventually get better at doing poems. Like, if you keep trying, or at writing, or at painting, or at playing the ukulele, or whatever your medium, or what you're deciding to do. But finding your unique voice, I think it's more important, or saying your unique story, or whatever really matters to you, is better than sounding beautiful, or more educated, or more, I don't know, what, or whatever. Like, if it's not your voice, if you're not probably gonna make it, you have to use your own voice. Yes. And the number three is, don't worry too much. If you worry too much, you will not do it. If you try too hard, you will not do it. But like, just do it. Or if you worry about doing it, no. If you do it without noticing it, you are probably gonna keep doing it. Yes. Yeah. It's, if you worry too much, if you stress, if you feel anxious about doing it, maybe it's not for you.
Don't worry about a thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
maybe. Yeah, because if it's making you feel this way, maybe you should be playing soccer or whatever, doing something else. And you have to stick to the idea of, I'm this thing or not. And I've seen so many unfortunate people stuck in one medium or doing one thing when they're very talented and intelligent people. So
Mhm.
Yeah, mind can be our worst enemy, our own minds. we're always trying to like, oh, am I gonna do it right? Am I gonna make it? I mean, that takes a lot of the energy and I think weighs you down. So it's better to use your advice and like, it's I'm gonna suck probably the first couple times. So might as well just forget about like being my main worry, like sucking, like just go ahead and do it, right?
Yeah. Um, I think that that's probably like another little matchbook that you can make right there. Just those three plus the extra that you started off with. um, but hablando del matchbook and even your other work, do you have any events coming up or any places where, aside from your website, where people can go and see your work and interact with it?
Um, I don't think so right now. I think we're done for this year. We just made Boston Art Book Fair last weekend. I think that was the last event of the season, the last in real life event.
Mhm.
Maybe we don't know yet. Maybe we will be doing Mexico City Index Art Book Fair on January probably. Mm, and I don't know. Yeah, I don't have anything in the calendar right now. Like we did a lot of fairs this year, non-stopping. So I actually want to take some time off and read and write new stuff and think of new books and take time to produce, because sometimes it feels like they are two different jobs, like making a thing and then going out and promoting it and selling it. And it's a and yeah, they feel like a completely different business. You have to be artist, distributor, representative, PR, seller, salesman. Like, yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I'm gonna go back to my shell and I try to create some more stuff, new stuff.
Cool. Yeah, I think
Can't
that's
wait.
really important, right? To take the time to create and rest and, sort of like refresh yourself. Um, yeah. I think I actually saw earlier today the Print Pomona Art Book Fair is already opening up registrations for next year. And that was, I believe, the last time. No, not the last time that I saw you. The last time that we ran into each other was at the LA Zine Fest
Yes.
in Long Beach. But last year, the first time was at the Print Pomona one. Um, and yeah, I think, for anybody that is listening or watching, I definitely recommend that you pick up some of the work, because it's not just your work that you sell at the Zine Fest, correct? You're also a distributor.
Yes,
He's a dealer.
I think yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think Latin America is full. It's there are a lot of super talented book artists. I've been trying to reach them and keep contact to them with them and selling their stuff. We carry the work of some artists from Argentina, Catalina Covert, from Peru, Terciopelo Ediciones. We also carry the work of a friend who's from Chile but now based in Mexico City, called Nico Gonzalez. And another Mexican publishers, Kobayashi Book Press, Piedra Ediciones. All of them our good friends, people we know, and and yeah, we try to also keep the new stuff of them flowing here in the States.
Awesome. And that's
That's
all
an
available on the website too, right?
Yes, everything is available at errant.press.
Órale.
Do you have any discount coupons to put like the password?
No, unfortunately,
Please.
no. I think my books are pretty affordable. Prices range from $5, I don't know, to 50. So it's not that crazy. I think that we have pretty affordable books.
There you go. And I think another tip is like that, a specific thing that you're doing with like your stand. It's like try to help each other as an artist. Sometimes people get into like, oh, it's my art. I'm gonna just talk about my art. Like, no, it's like whenever you have the chance, help each other, right? Especially if we're a Thai community.
Yes, I feel like community is a huge part of what we do. All of my friends come from uh, book fairs. Like I'm not kidding. Like it's a big part of what we do. What we do. So yeah.
And I know that you have like a whole thing about this, but for the people that go up to your booth in the future and they try to steal one of the books, what happens?
So we have a side project from Errante, called Steal Me Press. Steal Me Press, there are some scenes that try to promote anarchist thinking. And these scenes are not for sale and they are not free to take. If people want them, they have to actually steal them. But if we catch them, we call them out. We tell the organizers, the tables. We make a mess out of them because the price for getting them is that you actually have to steal them without us noticing. More like a challenge. So
Challenge accepted.
this is an invitation for people that think they are good book thieves. There's always this wise ass Mr. Know It All that is bragging about how good book thief he is. At least I was. Um, well, this is a challenge for those kind of people.
My question is there a specific book for it or everything's for the taken? Just saying, for a friend.
Like I don't understand.
Is there a book, you have this scene that says like meant to be stole? Is it like everything on the table meant to be stole or like just that is specific? Just asking for a friend, like.
I mean, some of part of the idea of this was I truly believe that if you cannot pay for knowledge, you should just take it. So depending on your condition, that answer can change, in my opinion.
I like
Robin
that.
Hood of books.
Yeah. But I like that, knowledge is there for the taking, and I totally agree. Although I do have to say, I have to call out right now for if they're even aware that we have a podcast. The person that stole my book 3 years ago at the LA Times Festival of Books. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed the poetry. Um, you owe me $8. And you know what's funny is they actually paid the $5 for the personalized poem and then walked away with my $8 book, which eventually I ended up actually le subí el precio. So
So you made all the consumers pay for that? That's what you're saying? Capitalism, man.
hey, it's a business, man. So yeah. Um Also, I want to say thank you to Alan too publicly for also commissioning a poem when we were at the Pomona Art Book Fair. I hope you and Tanya enjoyed it.
Thank you. I love that. As you can see, I love this kind of interactivity, and it was great to see someone like writing a poem live.
Yeah. Yeah, I think yours definitely stood out to me because we're both fans of New Order. So, I really enjoyed writing that poem for you. So thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. So again, thank you, Alan, for joining us today. This episode of the podcast, really I think was insightful. So I appreciate your thoughts and your point of view when it comes to knowledge and books. It's always refreshing to hear other people kind of pushing the limits of what that means for the community, and I think we're all the better for it. So thank you, Alan.
I have a really important question that I need to ask before we leave.
Man.
¿Las quesadillas llevan queso o no llevan queso?
Definitely no necesariamente. No necesariamente para
Caramba.
nada. No, vaya, no. I lived in Culiacan in the north of Mexico for a while, and they messed with me. So we actually sent a letter to Real Academia Española, and they said that not necessarily.
There you go. There you go, guys.
I mean, it's a language definition, but at least for where I'm from, not necessarily.
There you go, guys. You hear it from the source, right?
To follow up that question, though, what do you think of la torta de chilaquiles?
¿Qué tiene la pregunta? ¿Tiene
Oh,
chile o no tiene chile?
I really like, me gusta muchísimo. Me encantan las tortas de chilaquiles. Fun fact, for a while I sold chilaquil tortas in Mexico City. Yeah, I used to make like 200, 250 chilaquiles tortas daily for, for sell
Is-
them. Yes.
Mm,
So yeah, I
so-
like them. Of course, I like them.
It was amazing when I saw them for the very first time. And ese día que lo ordenó mi novia, yo no me tocó probarlo because she ate all of it really fast. Although I do have to admit, I really enjoyed my tacos de pastor that day. So,
Oh,
me
pues
no-
sí.
Yeah,
Are there tortas de chilaquile here in LA?
not yet. So
Not yet. Not yet.
Wow, I
Attitude.
see how.
There's a big business opportunity there.
ahí está. Si no te salen los libros, pues, you know.
I mean, yeah, exactly.
All right, Alan. So thanks again, man. We really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. For
Great having you.
for our viewers and listeners, make sure you check out Alan. Instagram is primarily where you have your stuff, no?
Yes, Instagram, Aaron.press, the same handle, Instagram handle at Aaron.press.
Oh, whatever. All right. So yeah, thank you again, everyone. Again, for those of you on the YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe and do all of that. For those on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts, make sure that you are continuing to subscribe and share it with your friends. So thanks again, Alan. Hope you have a great one, man.
Muchas gracias. Muchísimas gracias por la invitación.
Igualmente.
Ya me dio hambre.